What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a bit of an update on the big bad 105 1FZ. I know there was a heap of interest when I first put out the first video for this project, and since then it has been quite a few weeks, and I know there are a lot of people that really want to know where we're up to with this thing, and quite a lot has changed since the original plan. So I thought I'll go through a bit of an update with you all, keep you all up to date. Not only that, but we're at a point where we could actually probably really use the help of the Landcruiser community to try and hunt down what's going to go on next with the build. So look how freaking huge the thing is though. Our 80, for reference, is 2 inch and 33s. And that's the freaking difference. What a weapon. Obviously there's no engine in it, so it's sitting quite a lot higher than it normally would, but just the difference is just crazy. So anyway, 105, where we left off. I suppose I'll go back into the shed and start where we left off. Alright, so where we left last time, we had the 105 1FZ pulled down. We found that the crank was absolutely cooked, and we were under the impression, well, hey, we're going to have to find another crank, and we were deciding whether, well, I can't remember at that point whether we decided to go forged. I think at the end of this episode we had decided just to go forged rods and pistons, so, but we still needed a crank. So that's where we left off, and I didn't film the teardown of the 80 series 1FZ, but I don't think I filmed it anyway. I might have put one at the end because I can't remember. I need to go back and watch the footage. It's been too long. So the 80 series 1FZ, which is over here behind this barra. So I pulled the crank out of that. Once again, crank not the greatest. Definitely better than the one out of the 105, but still not the greatest. Crank would still need some work. Still would probably be all right, but just definitely not the sort of crank you want to start off with for a high horsepower build. You really want to be starting with just a mint perfect crank that doesn't need to be ground. So I'm sure these 1FZ cranks are plenty strong enough that you could grind them and they'll be fine, but at the same time, you know, someone's paying a lot of money to get one built. You know, if it was mine maybe and I was trying to do it on a budget, sweet, but for someone else paying big dollars to get a big dollar engine, not really. Really want a mint crank. So we started looking around for another crank that we could use. That was as far as I got the 80 series one, because the pistons are actually so grown to the bores that I would have had to hammer them out. I couldn't actually get them out of the thing. So yeah, I think at that point we decided we're just going to go forged rods and pistons. We just need a crank. So we started looking around for a crank. Turns out they're actually pretty hard to get, good ones. Who knew that apparently it's fairly common for 1FZs to spin bearings and ruin cranks. Or at the very least, people don't look after them and they just ruin cranks. I'm not sure which one, but hey, we couldn't find a good crank. So that snowballed. And the problem we had was basically any piston manufacturer you go to, again, same issue we had with the last forged 1FZ we did for the 80 series last year or the year before. It's a huge wait to get pistons manufactured to suit a 1FZ because no one really keeps them on the shelf. I think at the end of last episode, once we had decided to go forged, Spool actually had a set on the shelf. Literally, by the time I asked them or replied to their email to say, hey, order these, I would like to order them and pay for them now, they were like, oh no, sorry, they've already spoken for. The boss just told me they're already gone. So we were pretty much on that thing where we're gonna have to wait for pistons. I tried JE, I tried CP, I tried every single piston manufacturer or any supplier of any piston manufacturer. It was all the same boat. It was all between 14 to 18 week wait. And in this time, the owner had pretty much decided, hey, let's just buy a stroker crank and go stroker. If we're gonna need a crank anyway, we can't really find a standard one, just buy a 101mm stroke crank and go full 4.8 stroker FZ for this thing. So that's where we're at with it. I ended up just ordering a stroker kit. It's an 18-week wait for the CP pistons that come with the stroker kit. So it's gonna be spool crank, spool rods, CP pistons. So we're gonna go, 101mm stroke, which is 4.8 litre, half mil overbore because the bores on that block are really good, and 9.5 to 1 compression. So going to be a bit of a weapon. ARP mains, ARP head studs, all of the berries. Basically, we decided that we're going to build them in new manifold anyway, new exhaust manifold. So that was decided previously. If we're going to build them in new exhaust manifold anyway, we're going to put a T4 flange on it so we can get a bit more exhaust housing on this thing. And if we're going to go 4.8 litre and stroke it and do all the rest, we're going to probably put a G35 900 on this thing. So everything's there to make big power. There's no reason this thing shouldn't be able to see 600 at least. We probably will still pull it up before then just to try and save some driveline stuff. but we'll sort of determine that when it comes to it. So this is what leads me into the part where we actually need some help. So given that we are now talking about 500 plus horsepower, the manual gearbox in this thing isn't going to be loving life so much. Really, yeah, not going to be super loving life. So we sort of were hunting around at what options we could do. We were originally looking at going to a 4L80E, which if you guys don't regularly watch the channel, it's what we normally run behind a boosted LS setup on a 4-wheel drive. For people who want to go auto, they're an awesome box, bulletproof. They came out in the vans and trucks behind the LSs over in the States. We didn't get them in Australia. They have to be imported from America, but they are an awesome box. Fully electronically controlled, which is awesome because it's got the Haltech 2500 in it, which could control a 4L80, which means we'd have everything controlled from the one unit, and it would be just peachy daisy. Now, I got under this thing and started doing some measurements. I was using the 80 series, which has got a 4L80 in it behind the twin turbo LS. I was using that for reference as far as measurements from the flange at the back of the engine on the 4L80 back to the output flange. Oh yeah, that's what it is, the output flange for the rear drive shaft. And based off my measurements, it was going to move this transfer case back around 80 to 100 mil. That was if we moved the, yeah, it was going to be if we removed the engine fan, put thermos on it, custom made engine mounts to move the 1FZ forward, like 25-30 mil, then it would have still moved that output flange back around 80 mil, which because of the long range sub tank under the middle of the floor in this thing, would have been a problem because it would have been encroaching on where that fuel tank is. So not only that, that was when I actually learnt that the transfer case in this thing apparently is a built 60 series transfer case because they have better reduction gears or something, or they put better reduction gears in it or something. So this is not actually a standard transfer case out of a 105 behind the manual in this thing. So I started looking at, well, what if we put just an 80 series transfer case in it, because they seem to be a lot narrower from the output case of the box to the shaft on the rear drive shaft seemed to be a lot shorter on our 80 series transfer case than it did on the one in the 105. So we went on this whole big rounds and bouts thing of chasing around what we can do for a gearbox, how we can do it. The owner actually is very involved in the 1FZ Facebook pages and stuff, and in the community on Facebook and things like that. He actually managed to track down a guy who had built literally a Stroker 1FZ with a 4L80 in it previously. Managed to have a chat to him, and he's now got a new setup which is also making big power, but he's got a different gearbox, which I'll get to. And he pretty much told him that if he had the time again, he wouldn't have bothered with the 4L80. He would have gone this other option just because of the amount of messing about and how hard it was to get set up. So we sort of decided against that. It was going to be too much modification. We had to modify too much to make it work, and it was going to end up costing too much. Not only that, but wholesale automatics make the adapter ring for the 1FZ to the 4L80, which is all well and good, except for the, you know, normally for a 4L80 you'd be able to get a stock converter modified for 400 bucks, or maybe you'd buy a whole new converter for like 1800 to 2000. Well, the converter that you have to buy from Wholesale Automatics, which is to suit the adapter plate that they make for the 1FZ to the 4L80, which is a billet extended converter, is like $4 grand. So all of a sudden your 4L80 got very, very expensive. So anyway, what this other guy is now running behind his new setup, which is also making bulk power, is a built A442, but it's there's two different types of A442s. In the 80 series, they made one that had a cable operated, it's like an actuator for, it must be the shift pressure solenoid or the shift pressure actuator. I don't know how to explain it. I'm not an automatic transmission guy. But basically that was cable operated, which is a problem. But apparently in the 100 series, behind the 1HD FTEs and behind the UZs, the A442s that came behind those engines were actually completely electronically controlled. Shift pressure, which obviously would be ideal, and the owner has found a company that will build one of them boxes and rate it for the horsepower that we want to make out of this thing. Plus we'll be able to completely control it with the Haltech. So we are on the hunt for one of those gearboxes. They are an A442, I can't remember what the last two letters are that donate exactly what they are, but they're essentially a completely electronic A442 with complete electronic shift control, and that is what we're after, which is proving quite hard to find. So if any of you have a hookup or know anyone that's got one of them boxes, please get onto us because we really want to get one. In the meantime, we have plenty of time to find one. So we're not giving up on finding one because we're still got a 12 or 14 week wait for pistons even still. So there's plenty of time to try and sort this gearbox out, but that is the plan, is to go to one of those. That way this thing, we can go, you know, 500 plus wheel horsepower, completely ECU controlled gearbox, all the berries. So I'm gonna be doing quite a lot of rewiring of the car and quite a lot of resetting up of the car. We're gonna put like a rotary dial on the dash to control the Haltech. What this is going to be able to do is obviously you'll be able to control the boost in increments, but because it's going to have an electrically controlled shift pressures, I can control the shift pressures in increments as well. So, you know, high boost or in a towing tune, we can have some nice high shift pressures, keep that box shifting nice and solid, which is going to be safe for the gearbox. But when it's unloaded around town, you want to chuck the missus in it and let her drive, and you're not on high boost, you can keep the shift pressures down, which is going to make it nice and smooth to drive still like a factory car. So there's a lot of cool things we can do, having everything controlled by the same unit with inputs and outputs. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to how we can set this thing up. I'm actually thinking about, at the moment, we're thinking about even putting a PDM in this thing. So, you know, PDM would eliminate a lot of this clutter, this wiring mess. And not only that, but if you had a PDM, like there's so many cool things you can do when you have everything controlled by the one brain. So say we had this thing, we had a winch on it, we had a PDM and the Haltech, and we could set up a 4D table on the Haltech so that when the winch is engaged, it idles up automatically. Things like that. And not only that, but yeah, with the PDM, obviously you don't need any of these relays and fuses, all of that gets eliminated. So we'd be looking to use the PDM to control all of the four-wheel drive stuff, lockers, lights, all that sort of thing. We wouldn't use it. A lot of people use the PDM to control all of your light circuits and all that stuff in the car. We're going to leave that alone because it's factory. So there's not much need to change that. But yeah, we could definitely use the PDM to be, yeah, activating our lights, activating our winch, activating frickin' whatever else in the car, lockers. And the other great thing is obviously with the Haltech's CAN keypad, we can now have all of those things just on the one keypad button with CAN talks to the PDM and the ECU, which means we don't have to take up a million inputs and have a million buttons or anything like that. One CAN keypad, it controls everything through the Haltech, through to PDM, and we can set up lots of compensation and make it do exactly what it needs to do to control all that. So there's going to be quite a bit of resetting up happening, which is fine, but essentially what we're looking at is, by the time this thing's done, as you can see, it's a big, mean, tough truck. It is going to be an even meaner, tougher truck with, you know, hopefully 500 wheel horsepower, a complete auto, all complete automatic controlled, silky smooth, cruise control, all the bloody berries. It's gonna be great. So anyway, that's how much this thing's gotten real out of hand. So yeah, I just figured I'd make this update, keep everyone up to date, and hopefully find ourselves one of these electronic A442s so that we can get it sent away to get built. And hopefully that means that the gearbox and everything will be ready. At the same time, we get all the stuff ready back to build the stroker engine and get it ready as well. So it's definitely snowballed, far from what the original concept was. But hey, the owner's pretty keen, and I gotta say, I'm not very good at talking people out of going too far. Least of all myself. So I don't know how people expect me to talk other people out of going too far. But anyway, I'm excited. It's gonna be wicked. 4.8 stroker 1FZ auto, big power. It's gonna be awesome. So anyway, that's where we're at with it. We're probably gonna also, to make that sort of power, we're probably gonna have to redo the exhaust as well, because it's full 3-inch all the way through, which for that sort of power is probably starting to get a bit small, starting to choke it up a bit. But anyway, it's all things that we'll assess once we get it back in here. But for now, we need to get all our ducks in a row as far as getting all these parts together. So if you can help out, that would be freaking great. Get in contact with us. Thanks for watching anyway, guys. I hope you're looking forward to the build. We're really looking forward to it, but unfortunately it is going to be one of those fairly spaced, long things while we get all this stuff together. But I'll keep you all up to date. Thanks, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Peace out. See you. Bye.